Hello, Leiden geometry students. In this assignment, we're going to talk about the fundamentals of trigonometry. Basically, we're going to take some very simple problems, and we're going to walk through the steps to get used to doing some basic trigonometry. First thing you need to do, some basic trigonometry, is you need to know this, Sohcahtoa. We have this in the other video where Sohcahtoa is the guide that we use to explain how we're going to find different measurements of a triangle. You do need to already know what O, A, and H represent and how to label a triangle with those letters. If you're not familiar with O, A, and H, you need to go back to the previous assignment on trigonometry introduction. Okay, so let's start walking through some basic problems. Here is problem number one that we're going to do. We have a triangle, and we're going to try to solve for x. So first off, we have to decide for ourselves whether or not this is a trigonometry problem. How do we know if it's a trigonometry problem, or at least a basic trig problem? Well, first, the triangle has to be a right triangle. Is this triangle a right triangle? Yeah, we got a 90-degree angle right there, so check, it's a right triangle. Second thing that has to be the case, we know one side, the 60, and we want to know another side, the x. Those are sides. So, yep, that's what we're looking for here. And the third thing is, do we know the measures of one of the angles other than the 90? We're never going to pick the 90 degrees, so we need to know the measure of one of the other angles, and in this case, we know the 39. So, yep, this is going to be a trigonometry problem. So what do we do to solve for x? All right, we start with a little checklist. Here are the steps we're going to take for every one of these problems. Step one is going to be pick an angle. We don't pick the 90 degrees. We have to pick one of the other angles. We can use this 39 right here, or we could subtract from 180 to find the missing angle up top. Make our lives real easy. Let's just pick the 39. So step one, pick an angle. Check. Done. Step two, you have to label the sides O, A, and H. It's opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. From the 39, the opposite is the blank side over on the left. The adjacent side is the side that connects our angle to the 90-degree angle. So this is adjacent down here. And the 60 is going to be the hypotenuse. So O, A, and H. Check. Next, we got to decide if this is going to be a sine, cosine, or tangent problem. That's what the Sohcahtoa stands for up here. And so we're going to look here. The two sides that we're using, we're going to use the adjacent side, that's what we're trying to find, and we know the hypotenuse. So we're going to use A and H. We have to come up here to Sohcahtoa and figure out which one of these, sine, cosine, or tangent, uses A and H. So you kind of look at the possibilities here and you find which one of those has A and H in it, and it's cosine that has A and H. This is a cosine problem. Check. Next, we're going to write an equation. We're going to start by writing this equation. Cosine of theta, remember that theta symbol represents an angle, whatever the angle might be, is equal to the adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine of theta is equal to the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And now we're just going to start plugging the numbers from this problem in. For the theta, we put our angle. That'll become 39. A is x. The adjacent side is x on the top of the fraction. The bottom of the fraction is hypotenuse. That's going to be 60. So we plug these numbers in. So now we've written our equation. The last step is to solve the equation. To solve this equation, we have x divided by 60 is equal to the cosine of 39. All we got to do is get rid of this divided by 60. How do we do it? We multiply both sides by 60. So all we're going to have to do is figure out what 60 times the cosine of 39 is. But maybe you don't know how to do that. And that's the next thing we're going to have to sort out. How do we do this 60 times the cosine of 39 with our calculator? Well, with most calculators, you can actually type it in exactly as you see it. Most calculators are called a scientific calculator if it has a sine, cosine, and tangent button. We're going to type in 60 times the cosine. I'm just going to type cos and put my angle in, 39. We type it in just like that, and it'll spit out an answer. We almost always get some crazy decimal. We're going to round it to one decimal place. So we have 46.6 or 46.7. The next number tells us we're rounding down, so we'll keep 46.6 for this. Now, if you have a different calculator, okay, we can still do this a couple different ways. If you don't have a good calculator, you can also use Google. I know I'm on Veterans Day, so the Google logo looks a little different. But you can simply type 60 times the cosine of 39 degrees in here. 60 cos, and then in parentheses, 39. Now, here's the one trick. There are two ways to measure angles, both degrees and radians. Radians is something that will come up in algebra 2. For right now, we're in degrees. You're going to have to say degrees. You'll have to type in degrees and then close your parentheses. But 60 cosine 39 degrees, and Google will just turn into a calculator and give us the same answer, 46.6 this way as well. If instead you're somebody who likes using Desmos, no problem. Go to desmos.com. I'm clicking on their calculator, and we can type 60 cos 39 right here. Now, it's going to have the same problem and use this thing called radians. If you see my answer here, it's getting 15.9. That's not right. We have to change the measurement to degrees. And the way we do that is over on the right side, there's a little wrench over there, and you got to select degrees instead of radians, and it'll change the answer to that 46.6 as well. So you can do 60 cosine 39 a couple of different ways. Either way, we're ended up with that 46.6 for our answer. All right, we're going to try a handful of other problems, but they're all done basically the same way. Here is problem number 2. Step 1, pick an angle. We're going to pick the 65 degrees. Never pick the 90. Next, label our sides O, A, and H. So we want to make sure we know them. Is X going to be O, A, or H? Is 28 going to be O, A, or H? And then this blank side over here we're not going to use in this problem. But in this case, X is the opposite, 28 is the adjacent, and the blank side is the hypotenuse. So we're going to use these two sides, the 28 and the X. It's an O and an A. So which trig function uses O and A? All right, this is a tangent problem. So awesome, we got a tangent problem. Next, we're going to write our equation. We'll start with the blank equation. Tangent of theta is O over A. Now take the three things we have in this problem, the X, the 28, and the 65, and put them in the right spots. We'll have the tangent of 65 is X over 28. That's right in our equation. Next, to solve it, we're just going to multiply both sides by 28, and the rest is calculator work. What do we get for X? We get 60.0 with correct rounding. All right, next problem. Okay, problem number 3, same thing. First step, we're going to pick our angle. Probably going to pick the 27 here. We'll all do that. So check for picking an angle. Label the sides O, A, and H. X is the opposite. The blank side is the adjacent. 73 is the hypotenuse, so we labeled our sides. Next, we have to decide if this is sine, cosine, or tangent. In this case, we're using O and H. That shows up under sine. So we know this is a sine problem. Next, we're going to write an equation. We start with a blank equation and fill in with the measurements from this picture. We end up with sine of 27 is equal to X over 73. That's writing in our equation. Next, we solve the equation. We're just going to have to multiply both sides by 73. And what are we going to get for X? It's going to be 33.1. Excellent. Problem number 4. Basically the same steps over and over and over again. Pick our angle, 77. Label our sides O, A, and H. And we're going to use these two measurements. So is it a sine or cosine or tangent problem? This one is going to be a tangent because we're using O and A in this problem. So we have a tangent problem. Next, we write an equation. Start with the blank one. Then start filling in the numbers from this problem. We have tangent of 77 is equal to X over 41. The one step to solving this thing, multiply both sides by 41. What do we get for X? It's going to be 177.6 degrees, or 0.6, not degrees. That's solving the equation. Check. Okay, so let's see if you can do this now. Here's problem number 5. Let's see if you can get all the way to the end and solve for X. All right, so the first thing you were supposed to do is decide if the sides were opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. The X is the adjacent side, 50 is the hypotenuse. Then you had to figure out if it's sine or cosine or tangent. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So then we're going to write our equation. Cosine of 65 is equal to X over 50. Multiply both sides by 50, and we're going to end up getting 21.1 for our final answer. Problem number 6. Same thing. Let's see if you can set this up and solve for X in this problem. Step 1 is to identify the sides. X is our opposite side, 12 is the adjacent. Step 2, decide if it's sine or cosine or tangent. In this case, opposite and adjacent is going to be a tangent problem. So we're going to take this and turn it into an equation. The tangent of 71 is equal to X over 12, and then solve it by multiplying both sides by 12. We're going to get X is equal to 34.9 for a final answer. And our last problem here. See if you can get all the way to the end and find X. Okay, step 1, our angle's already picked for us. X is the opposite, 20 is the hypotenuse. O and H is going to be sine, so we're going to use a sine problem. Write this equation. It's going to be sine of 32 is equal to X over 20, so we multiply both sides by 20. And we get X is equal to 10.6 after correct rounding.